Hey guys, it's just us today, and I'm grateful for so many things that have happened this year, and equally disappointed about some of the events that have unfolded since we've started. I mean, there's been a lot of news on election outcomes, but I think I want to take a pause to celebrate some of our big championing wins on this show. The show recently got listed on the top 100 outstanding executives list supported by Involve on YouTube. Took us a year, an incredible year, to start the show, and I'm so grateful that having started, it landed, it resonated, it connected with so many people, and for us to get listed is such a big exposure in a big way, and we're only grateful that there's more momentum to come. And part of us wrapping up this season, it has been so eventful. Many lessons came out, and tied to those elections is this notion of change. If many times people have been positive to the call of change, saying, hey, we can no longer live, for example, when you look at South Africa's changing political landscape, when you look at the surprise change in Botswana, maybe for some not that much surprising, but it's so encouraging to see the evolution of what people's change needs are and how we can better meet them, not just as leaders, not just in terms of the evolution of inclusion or below or sense or the fast changing pace of belonging or having a strong sense of belonging, which is what we started off with earlier this year. We dubbed this year the year of change, with so many things changing, and the US election was it was a historic change, not just for the country, but for a lot of people all over the world. In as much as this outcome has come, there's so much that it has such a profound impact on the psychology and also on people's internal sense of safety now. The renewed now relationship of people, of how, for example, you can go about being your authentic self at work, that needs to be revisited. It always seems like the more things change, as inevitably the saying says, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We speak a lot about on this show, for example, about sponsorship, allyship, and some forms of mentoring and support and coaching. And yet, people issues which are at the heart of support seem to be moved down the bucket list of priorities. Globally, it's such a messy field. War still continues in different parts of the world. And yet, ironically, 30 years after the Berlin Wall has fallen down, we are still at war. And one has to start questioning, when will the war cease? When will there be a pure ceasefire on so many of these things that affect us all, not just equally, but some far more than others. But at the end of the day, everyone will be impacted in some shape and form. And to caution this, I think it's imperative that we are now mindful of what changes legally people want to impose. I mean, one of the biggest concerns is, what does a Trump 2.0 presidency will do on people and people unification? To talk about continuing war of DEI, now we see the war on DEI spill over into something that is far larger than any one country can contain. We've learned from episode 3 with Pumla Dlamini, for example, the need for kind leadership. I'm really grateful for how this podcast has evolved and keeps evolving. I think one of the lessons that really stand out in terms of bringing people together and unifying people and how we can go about it is really borrowing from a lesson that we've just recently learned with Avelile's episode on episode 10. And one of the key lessons that stood out for me in terms of how we can go about people unification is, for example, the issue of equal focus and equal opportunity, which I feel is a great platform, it's a great mantra to have on supporting certain things that can help people move the needle in some shape and form. Where there's solidarity, where there is empathy, where there is vulnerability, where people are able to openly and candidly share, as some of our episodes have highlighted previously, for example, with Roy, for example, allowing room for that I can talk with about my pain and you can talk about your pain. We have a space of shared trauma, and we need leaders who are going to be able to prioritize that unification in meaningful ways that really give people agency. As Roy say, tying DEI into the results, into tangible results that people can really celebrate and look, say, hey, these are non-negotiables. And one of those results is psychological safety, right? We've talked a lot about psychological safety earlier on in the season. And with it being under threat in so many places and in other places ambivalent about how it's going to unfold, psychological safety is something that is undeniably integral to people's sense of navigation, sense of safety, limiting many instances where you have to code switch. Limiting a number of instances where, for example, the glass ceiling or the rainbow ceiling, as the book reveals that I'm currently reading, really doesn't feel so impossibly high or so impossible and extraordinarily excellent or abnormally excellent that you cannot see yourself attaining it. And I think one of the reasoning or one of the lingering questions that I have struggled with as well, digesting the elections of this year, looking at those lessons, clearly certain things emerge. The values of leaders are important, right? Not just in kind leadership, but the values in political discipline, the values in community and informing community safety. And connecting more into the purpose of what I want this show to do, I really wanted to build a show. This is just to go back, this is like behind the scenes. It takes a while for us to produce an episode, and ideally we would love to be, I think the priority for us as season 2 is started off as a monthly podcast. We have the full intention and the desire to be more regularly updating our show. And I'm only grateful that when we started, it was indeed nothing for us without us. And we have done a lot of change as a podcast. Part of that change was really feeling seen and heard in an extraordinary way that our listeners have tuned into. So from the bottom of my heart, I am truly, truly grateful for your loving support and the investment that you have on the show. It means a lot as a creator, as a podcaster starting out. There's so much that is still will never get perfect. Perfection is the fallacy. But I really hope what we do get perfect as a people is supporting each other. This is what really stood out for me in his episode, is the call for people to support each other, not just South Africans, Allyship, forms of support, allyship, the need to support each other through empathy, through listening, as mentioned on the podcast previously with Anne-Marie Schroeder, that we are all doing our best with the trauma that we each individually carry. This is a paraphrase. Our guests have really brought such key insights, such key and invaluable lessons that I think can be applied to really incorporating any idea that you might have, whether that is for people unification, for advancing our diversity, and the ever-evolving landscape of people risk. It's always growing. It's always needing a watchful eye. It's always needing a hero. I appreciate the fact that there's a longevity to these efforts. It's not futile. There is a connected piece that really informs and helps shape the outcome of so many people who want to do better. This is not to discount people who have been on the right side of history, but it's to encourage those who have been on the right side of history to keep staying on the right side of history, right? That's the very important. It's important that you always try to stay on the right side of history. But more importantly, how do we confront the people that are on the other side of history? That's a tough one. And gleaning from some of the conversations that I've held with Udoka, Roy, we have a lot of options. But one of them is understanding from a point of other people's trauma. putting the other person's trauma into our own lived experience. And unifying people is going to take a lot of everyone's hard work, smart work, hard work, persuasion, motivation, but more so conviction. Many people are still forgotten, and we risk losing more people if we do not truly unite ourselves to a true call of action. A call of action that is clear on unifying people. Yes, there are many people that many people don't want to be united with, but at the end of the day, someone's humanity shouldn't be conditional on the things that they cannot change about themselves. We cannot change, for example, I think I started earlier this season, that there's so many immutable differences that informs their diversity, because diversity is a fact of life. You cannot do away with diversity, be it neurodiversity, be it, living with disabilities, be it with gender diversity, racial diversity, political diversity, which now is the dividing cause for so many things that we now see spill over into other diversity realms. But truly respecting and seeing each other. This is the Ad Ideas podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening in.